Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another edition, Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic, a lot of yellow areas here. This is all wind chill advisories out for Bristol Bay, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, just about all the west coast, Seward Peninsula there, on up over to St. Lawrence Island, including Nunivak Island, and that's out for tonight and tomorrow. Wind chills running anywhere from 25 to 45 degrees below zero. Same thing here for the Alaska Range, wind chill advisory out there for wind chills possibly as low as 50 below zero, as well as the Tanana area in the central interior and on up to the Yukon Flats. And really anywhere that there's wind over 15 miles an hour will probably be wind chill advisory level type conditions anywhere over interior Alaska, right on down to the possibly the North Gulf Coast areas here. Not quite reaching it, but red area right there, northeast Prince William Sound. That's north of Valdez, actually specifically for Thompson Pass, and that's a blizzard warning that's out for Thompson Pass from, let's see, 3 a.m. tonight through tomorrow for blizzard conditions, strong north winds, and some snow, moisture moving in. That'll create whiteout conditions over fall. They'll stay probably airborne and blow around with the very low, dry conditions. And then a winter storm warning out for the northern panhandle, Juneau, Northern Admiralty Island, on up Klondike Highway, Haines, on up to White Pass. That's for heavy snow. This actually kicks into effect 6 p.m. tonight and continues all night tonight and through tomorrow, into tomorrow night as well. Looking for some fairly heavy amounts of snow, anywhere from 8 to 16 inches in the next day or so. And winter weather advisories here for the North Gulf Coast and the northern panhandle, back in toward Yakutat, but not quite to Cordova. And that's for snow, but not quite as heavy as in the warning area there, but still could see anywhere from several inches falling in this area. And moving up to the north, we've got wind chill advisories all the way up to the eastern Brooks Range, eastern North Slope. Could see wind chills to 55 degrees below zero in these areas here. And winter weather advisory for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds and wind chills, along with blowing snow, reducing visibility to less than half a mile at times. So moving on to the satellite images. You can see pretty clear and cold here with the white surface area showing up, or the ground level showing up as white due to the very cold temperatures well below zero, and north winds pushing that cold air all the way down across the Alaska Peninsula and on down, just about off the chart here. Otherwise, a few clouds around Kodiak Island. We have a persistent low spinning here in the Gulf of Alaska. It continues to circulate moisture, pulls it back to the north, onto the North Gulf Coast, in across the Copper River Basin areas, and actually some of that sliding northward, and areas of light snow associated with that. And then the precipitation heaviest here over the northern panhandle into about Yakutat. And then less of that, you can see some breaks down here near Dixon Entrance, so lighter amounts down over the southern southeast coast, and that falling mostly in the form of rain over the southern panhandle today, and a real narrow area of the mixed rain and snow to where it just suddenly becomes snow here with the colder temperatures. Out to the west here, eastern Bering Sea, just cold north winds, heavy freezing spray in the sea ice-free areas of the marine zones out here for the next day or so, a couple of days here, on down to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, lee side of the peninsula there, clearing skies with that downsloping wind condition. Same thing going on here in the Barren Islands. And we have a weakening front here, mostly just clouds, some very light precipitation with that. Light rain actually transitioned back over to snow at AKwx during the day today. Snow showers out at Shimia. And this portion through here really washing out and weakening. You can see, and the clouds there associated with the next system is kind of sapping all the strength out of this, and this really hasn't anywhere to go except sliding up to the northeast or just do a slow dissolve here over the next 12 to 24 hours. Strong high pressure will keep it from really pushing any farther to the north. And rolling that again, you can see the main low center just scooting off the map there, off in toward and across Kamchatka Peninsula, as this one makes an appearance onto the picture late. In fact, you can see the back edge of the occluded front there, just getting onto the photo. And on the chart today, strong high pressure right over the extreme Russian Far East there, and down into the northern Bering Sea. You can see the sea ice here in the lighter area, and that's continuing. In fact, that could make a jog to the south of about 80 miles here by the end of the month. South with those cold temperatures and north winds, mostly the advecting southward of the ice with lesser extent of new ice forming, but it will form. And already starting to pick up some snow showers here in the offshore flow here as it picks up moisture over the open water areas of cold Arctic air coming out off the southwest coast, and that may tend to increase over the next couple of days. Otherwise, weakening front here over the Aleutians, very tight pressure gradient across southern Alaska for those strong gusty winds, anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour, especially in the channeled areas here along the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, through the passes of the Alaska Range on down into Kodiak Island. A few snow showers developing there, picking up moisture as the winds blow out of southern Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait. Fognak Island probably saw some light snow today, maybe the south side of Kodiak Island itself. And then the contrast in precipitation over the Panhandle. For tonight, as I mentioned, this front right along the coast, winter storm warning, northern Panhandle, rain or snow on down to the south. Strong winds, snow blowing snow developing across the eastern Copper River Basin areas. That'll extend down into the Thompson Pass area. Again, as I mentioned, there's a blizzard warning out tonight into tomorrow there. Stay dry, varying amounts of clouds trying to pull westward here. It's kind of hard to say how far west it'll get. Kind of hard to say how far west the snow will get either. But those 40, 50 mile an hour northerly winds, Seward, probably trend down a little bit there as they stay very strong back across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay area. And even the southwest interior, very cold air continues to blow on these northeast winds right out and beyond the coast. And for tomorrow, we'll see the front out here. The next one comes up. The other one, the original one, washes out. In fact, let me back it up one here. Here's that front I spoke of today. And that next one here just kind of takes over the whole scene there as the other one. Moisture slips up to the northwest. So snow and wind coming into the western central Aleutians, but nothing too heavy. Stays dry, windy, and cold over the eastern and northern Bering Sea. Less winds up here, though. And windy and cold over interior Alaska. Milder here in the east compared to the western areas due to the cloud cover and areas of light snow or snow showers that'll extend up along the Arctic coast. And then for Monday, yet another system. Southwest flow pushes another front. Mixed precipitation here for the Panhandle, probably in the form of snow again. Northern Panhandle, North Gulf Coast snow. Not so bad in the conditions here across the Copper River Basin. Still windy, still areas of blowing snow. And again, how far west the snow gets is anyone's guess right now. Looking at the low temperatures tonight, mildest down over the Panhandle, staying in the 30s there, but 47 below forecast. I believe that's for Galena, and well below zero, 45 below at Bettles, below zero south central Alaska, almost right down to the coastline, and teens for the Pribilofs. Highs for tomorrow, upper 30s the Aleutians, lower 40s central southern Panhandle, well below zero north of the Alaska Range, and barely above zero for south central Alaska. Lows the following morning a little milder, except Eagle down to 41 below, and followed by highs well below zero.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. First graphic for Sunday morning. Lots of VFR here, southern Alaska, out and off the coast, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, up to the Brooks Range. From the Brooks Range north, marginal VFR with IFR in the north slope, and moisture coming up from south and southeast to north and northwest here, brings some IFR. Definitely into the eastern North Gulf Coast, and then northward across the eastern Copper River Basin, Northway, Tok, Chicken, on up to at least marginal VFR for Eagle. Next ends down in the northern panhandle and improving farther to the south, southern southeast coast VFR. And then out west, marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. A couple areas of insignificant IFR out there as well. And band IFR for the afternoon with frontal boundary there hung up over Adak Island and mostly north of the western Aleutians, otherwise marginal for the Bering Sea, eastward here to the Alaska Peninsula. Pribilof's marginal, Nunivak Island VFR. VFR continues along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay. Notice this area IFR sliding northward throughout the day, so a little bit of improvement here south of the Alaska Range, the Copper River Basin, probably staying marginal. Eastern Alaska Range probably will go VFR as well late in the afternoon. And then Tanana Valley there, northward, Yukon Flats. IFR, Northern Panhandle, roughly Yakutat on down the coastline. And for Monday morning, this area continues to slowly move northward. Eastern Brooks Range, North Slope, Eastern Arctic Coast IFR, VFR back to the west. Good VFR again here over the western and central interior, including south central Alaska. Still some lingering marginal VFR, Kenai Peninsula, Copper River Basin, maybe the Alaska Range. And another band IFR, the frontal boundary out to the west, otherwise marginal VFR until you get to Nikolsky. VFR there on Alaska Dutch Harbor, Alaska Peninsula, Pribilof's VFR. And the Panhandle looking better, still some marginal and IFR areas there, but not quite as extensive as it was. And then for the afternoon, mostly VFR across the southeast coast, marginal VFR, Lincoln Glacier Bay, about Juneau on up to White Pass. IFR Eastern North Gulf Coast, marginal VFR Copper River Basin, IFR North Slope, and a small patch IFR here, Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise marginal, Bering Sea and Aleutians. Passes Enitukvik and Atigun both look marginal tomorrow throughout the day, and for Lake Clark and Rainy, VFR in the forecast. Being increase in the clouds, both those passes as well as Rainy, but I think they'll stay VFR through the afternoon. Windy though, VFR, a lot of moisture streaming north, becomes IFR, especially on the southern entrance. Could be late morning, midday, somewhere around there. Timing a little off, but it'll definitely be a downward trend from morning to afternoon. And Isabel IFR, and then as the moisture pulls away, maybe becoming marginal in the afternoon, especially late. Mentesta starting out IFR, and should be some good improvement. May take till mid or late afternoon to happen. We'll probably go VFR. Tanita IFR becoming marginal. And for Portage, occasionally marginal VFR. Could be some brief periods of IFR during the day tomorrow, but I think it'll mostly be in the marginal category. Chilkoot and White, solid IFR. Freezing levels at the surface, eastern North Gulf Coast, 2,000 to 4,000 feet on down the Panhandle, the 4,000 foot zone over the Queen Charlottes. Otherwise, you can see big push of cold air here from the western interior pushing the surface almost off the chart there, but then it comes back up here just west of Nikolsky. And for icing, the disturbances out here over the western Bering, just really nothing too significant, just a chance of some light rime icing below 9,000 feet. And same thing here, south central Alaska, moisture coming up, areas of light to isolated, considerable moderate rime icing, and impulses spreading northward across the eastern interior and the southerly flow aloft. Could be some considerable moderate rime icing here for the north coast of the Panhandle, but not so down south. Jet stream, upper level low, cold upper low here, and strong northerly winds right out of the Arctic, not all that strong, 50 to 70 knots, and then coming back around from the south, pulling the moisture up into the east side. 9,000 foot winds, pretty strong at this elevation here. 50 to 60 knots out of the north-northeast, coming down 50 knots across eastern Bristol Bay, and then diminishing here over the Alaska Peninsula. Southerly, south to north, 40 to 50, mostly along the coast of the Panhandle there, and then lighter under that low complex, Copper River Basin, and then east of Kodiak. 50-knot winds.
Just as the sun is part of weather on Earth, it also affects weather in space. The sun creates solar wind by steadily releasing a flow of plasma particles in all directions around it. Sometimes the sun gives off a flash of light and X-rays. This is known as a solar flare. When massive bursts of particles explode into space, we call it a coronal mass ejection, or CME. When a CME is directed toward Earth, it hits the magnetosphere, the magnetic field around our planet that protects us. If the storm is large, we may even get to enjoy a light display in the sky called the auroras. In space, satellites may be damaged, and astronauts should take cover. On Earth, people do not feel any physical effects. We may lose electricity in some areas, polar flights may be rerouted, and satellite services may be disrupted. While these situations aren't ideal, they are rare and fixable. This is why we will continue to study the Sun and its interactions with Earth and the solar system.
Longing for more space, open skies, and exotic travel? Then look up, about 30 to 600 miles straight up, at the Ionosphere, Earth's interface to space. Nestled far above the clouds but below outer space, this little understood destination invites you to explore its many features. Experience both the weather from Earth and the weather from space. Marvel at the ballet of radio waves and navigation signals, like GPS, leaping through this particle paradise. Sit back, relax, and take in the aurora, some satellites, and the International Space Station as they sail by. And you'll want your camera handy for one of the region's signature features, bright and colorful air glow. This daily show is made possible by the ionosphere's own swarming charged particles, because that's what the ionosphere is. It's all charged particles. During the day, enjoy the sea of particles, freshly energized by the sun. As the sun sets, this particle party relaxes and the air glow thins. Our quieter nightlife lets you gaze into clearer skies. The ionosphere is in constant motion, an amazing effect of space weather. Don't miss when solar storms rain down. The storm separates the particles even more, making this colorful region delightfully more dense in some places and stunningly sparse in others. And don't forget about storms from Earth below. Your weather from back home also stirs up this one-of-a-kind destination. Experience the unique beauty of every season, as changes in Earth's atmosphere, daily and annually, can create pressure waves, changing the ionosphere's shape and density. Venture to the equator, where our particles are packed in lush and thick. Cruise along a magnetic field line and see how the ionosphere's charged material also interacts with Earth's own magnetic field. Don't miss the superhighway of particles zipping out to space and back down to the planet. This unpredictable parade of charged particles can help you unplug and unwind. This is because the crowd of particles can garble the radio and satellite communications from home. The ionosphere welcomes you to discover more about this little-known region. After all, once you've explored this interface to space, who knows how much farther you'll be able to go.
When a star, bigger and more massive than the Sun, runs out of fuel at the end of its life, its core collapses while the outer layers are blown off in a supernova explosion. What's left behind depends on the star's original mass. A star roughly 10 to 20 times our Sun leaves behind a neutron star. A more massive star becomes a black hole. Unlike black holes, neutron stars are directly observable, usually as pulsars, the lighthouses of the cosmos. Discovered 50 years ago, they are the densest observable objects in the universe. Neutron stars compress up to twice the Sun's mass into a city-sized sphere. Matter is packed so tightly that a teaspoon of neutron star interior would weigh more than 1 billion tons on Earth. Still, the nature of the ultra-dense matter in the cores of neutron stars is unknown. Because neutron stars pack so much mass into such a tiny volume, they produce gravity strong enough to bend the light they emit, distorting their appearance in a way that enables the mass and size of the star to be measured. Scientists cannot reproduce the extreme conditions in and around neutron stars on Earth. They must look into the galaxy to answer decades-old questions about extreme matter and gravity. NASA's Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer mission, or NISA, will make X-ray observations of neutron stars from its perch on the International Space Station. It will give astronomers more insight into these mysterious objects, helping determine what is under their surface. A multi-purpose mission, NISA includes a technology demonstration called Sextant. It will analyze NISA's observations to validate the use of rapidly rotating neutron stars as navigation beacons for travel in deep space throughout the solar system and beyond.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, pretty good movement or advancement of the ice edge here to the south and to the southwest, starting to head back down towards St. Matthew Island. And over the next, or by the end of the month, next 5 or 6 days, expecting the sea ice edge to advance southward, maybe as much as 80 nautical miles. And conditions will continue to be the same here in Cook Inlet, with just a very slow southward movement of the ice edge each day, kind of very little bit farther south, Calgan Island, and that's going to continue. In fact, with these gusty northerly winds, there's a chance of some ice could come out of Kamishak Bay and move into northern Shelikof Strait. There's that possibility. And for the coastal water forecast, south to southeast winds, 30 knots, good for small craft advisories on the south coast, falling back to 25 knots on the north coast and really light farther to the north. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northerlies 20 knots, maybe some higher gusts, definitely higher gusts, Stevens Passage. Out of the east, gusting 35 knots, 5-foot seas, southeast 25, there for Clarence Strait. And outlook for Monday, Clarence Strait southeast 15 knots, same forecast here for the central inside waters. Lynn Canal south 20 knots, seas 4 feet, southerlies 20 knots here for much of the coastline, with seas running 11 to 12 feet. In the north coast though, small craft advisories level wind speeds at 25 knots with 14-foot seas. Prince William Sound northerlies 25 knots, still maybe some higher gusts out of the northern bays, there probably will be. Seas 3 feet, otherwise for the North Gulf Coast, variable to north winds at 20 knots, and northeast at 20 for the western North Gulf Coast, seas 6 feet. Gale force northwest winds here for the Barren Islands, 35 knots, 11-foot seas, and northern Cook Inlet, not bad, north at 15, but south of the Foreland, small craft advisories northeast at 30 knots, northwest 30 knots, Kamishak Bay, those seas up to 12 feet. And then we continue the gales for the Barren Islands out of the northwest and include Kamishak Bay on Monday there with 12-foot seas. No change, southern Cook Inlet, north 30 knots, a little bit of a pickup north of the Forelands out of the northeast, bringing up to 20 knots, east 20 for Prince William Sound. And the eastern North Gulf Coast, there southerlies at 20 knots, 8-foot seas, southwest 20 on the west side with 8-foot seas. Kodiak Island, north to northwest, 30 knots, about sums it up, seas 8 to 10 feet. Stronger winds, Sitkinak to Castle Cape here, 40-knot winds, and then back down to 30 from the north across the Alaska Peninsula, seas 11 to 12 feet. Also north 30-knot, north winds at 30 knots there for Bristol Bay. And no change for Monday, northerlies 30 knots there for Bristol Bay. Also Alaska Peninsula, north winds 30 knots, 9 to 13-foot seas, highest on the north side of the peninsula there. And from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, a little bit lower, still in the gale threshold, northwest 35 knots, 12-foot seas. No change for Kodiak Island, west-northwest at 30 knots, 8 to 10-foot seas. And for the Fox Islands, break it down, Unalaska Island, northeast 25 to 30 knots, 11 to 8-foot seas. And Unimak Island, call it east at 30. Still small craft advisories with 11 to 13 foot seas. And we'll bring it up to gale force here for the central Aleutians, Adak and Atka. East winds 35 to 40 knots, strongest on the Pacific side of the islands. And then 40 knot easterly winds extend all the way out to Shemya. And then for Monday, even stronger, 45 knot winds, not quite making storm force levels there, but just under it, 20 foot seas, all the way from Shemya to Amchitka Island, and east-northeast of 40 knots for Adak and Atka, with seas in the upper, or 15 to 17 feet, and northeast winds for the Fox Islands, both through Mackinac, Alaska, northeast 30 knots, seas 10 to 13 feet. Southwest coast tomorrow, strongest winds will be south of Nunivak Island along the Kuskokwim Delta coast, northerlies at 30 knots, north 20 knots, Yukon Delta coast, 25 knot winds for St. Lawrence Island, northeast 25 for both St. Matthew Island and the Pribilof, seas right around 10 feet. And then for Monday, north 20 knots, Norton Sound, and brisk wind advisories here for St. Lawrence Island, right on down the Yukon Delta coast. In fact, north 30 knots for brisk wind advisories here along the southwest coast. Then you got heavy freezing spray, especially right off the ice edge here, and Pribilofs as well. Heavy freezing spray, northerlies 30 knots, seas 25 to 30 feet. I'm sorry, let me back up. Seas 8 to 11 feet, winds 25 to 30 knots. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds on the light side at 10 knots, northwest 15, central coast all the way down to Cape Thompson. And then brisk wind advisories, Cape Thompson to Wales for northerlies at 25. Those will fall under brisk wind advisory levels on Monday, stay at about 20 knots, light here for the western Capes. Northwest 15 for the central and western coast, and west 10 to 15 on the east side. For tonight, blizzard warning kicks in for Thompson Pass, whiteout conditions, gusty winds, heavy snow warning. Juneau, Admiralty Island, on up the Klondike Highway to Haines and Skagway for heavy snow tonight and tomorrow. And for Monday, blowing snow continues through the passes of the North Gulf Coast, and it stays wet over the Panhandle, dry, cold, and windy over much of southern Alaska.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.